I stared at my phone in disbelief, reading the family group text over and over. My sister Amber had just announced her wedding date. 6 months from now. The exact same day as mine. My hands trembled as I called her immediately. When she answered with that smug tone, claiming it was the only date that worked with her venue, I nearly lost it. 2 weeks engaged versus my full year of planning, and somehow she gets priority. Mom texted separately. Please be understanding, Geneva. You know how Amber gets when she doesn't have her way. I knew then I had to make a choice. Back down again, or finally stand up to my golden child sister. Growing up with Amber was like living in perpetual shadow. From the moment she was born 4 years after me, she became the sun around which our entire family orbited. My earliest memories include my parents canceling my ballet recital to attend Amber's preschool orientation, missing my honor roll ceremony because Amber had a cold, and my dad working double shifts to afford Amber's private gymnastics lessons while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins. It wasn't that my parents were cruel. They provided the basics and occasionally remembered to celebrate my achievements. But Amber had a particular gift for commanding attention, whether through accomplishment or crisis, and my parents never developed immunity to her manipulations. By high school, the pattern was so established that I stopped expecting equal treatment. I became self-sufficient out of necessity, working after-school jobs, securing my own scholarship to state university, and building a life deliberately separate from my family's drama. 3 years ago, I met Paul at a friend's 4th of July barbecue. He noticed me sitting alone by the pool, brought me a plate of food without asking, and spent the entire afternoon making me laugh. He was the first person who seemed more interested in drawing me out than filling silence with his own stories. 6 months into dating, he admitted he'd noticed me long before that barbecue, through mutual friends, but had waited for the right moment to introduce himself. After 2 years together, Paul proposed during a weekend trip to his family cabin by Lake Superior. No grand gestures or public spectacles, just a quiet moment on the dock at sunrise. The ring nestled in a tiny wooden box Head carved himself. I said yes immediately, tears streaming down my face, feeling for once like the protagonist in my own life story. We decided on a relatively long engagement, giving ourselves time to save money and plan thoughtfully. I found a charming historic venue that perfectly balanced elegance with our modest budget, paid the deposit, and secured our date. Every decision felt meaningful, a deliberate construction of our future together. I even made tentative peace with my family dynamics, inviting Amber to be a bridesmaid despite our complicated history. She accepted with surprising enthusiasm, and for a few blissful months, everything seemed perfect. Then came the bombshell announcement on social media. Amber and her boyfriend Taylor were suddenly engaged, despite having relationship troubles just 3 months earlier. Taylor had actually moved out of their apartment briefly, though nobody in the family was supposed to know. I had only learned about it accidentally through a mutual friend. Their reconciliation and subsequent engagement happened at whirlwind speed. I immediately called Amber to congratulate her, genuinely happy that she'd found stability with Taylor, who seemed like a decent guy despite being somewhat passive in the relationship. She sounded distracted on the phone, barely acknowledging my well wishes before hanging up with a cryptic comment about seeing me at Sunday dinner. That Sunday dinner became a moment I'll never forget. My parents had gathered the family, ostensibly for their anniversary, though that was still weeks away. Paul and I arrived first, helping my mother in the kitchen while my father grilled steaks. When Amber and Taylor arrived, she was practically vibrating with excitement, a champagne bottle clutched in her manicured hands. Mom, Dad, Geneva, everyone, we have the most amazing news, Amber announced before Wed even sat down to eat. We just booked our venue and set our wedding date. My father popped the champagne, glasses were distributed, and then Amber dropped the bomb with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. June 15th. 6 months from now. We're getting married at Lakeside Manor. The room went silent. Paul squeezed my hand under the table as I struggled to find words. June 15th. I finally managed. That's our wedding date. We've had it booked for almost a year. Amber widened her eyes and obviously feigned surprise. Oh my gosh, is it? I totally forgot. But we already paid the non-refundable deposit at Lakeside, and they don't have any other Saturdays available this summer. Something about her performance felt rehearsed, but I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there was a solution. Can't you get married on a Friday or Sunday instead? Or wait until fall? We sent our save the dates months ago. My mother jumped in before Amber could respond. Geneva, don't be difficult. Your sister is excited about her special day. Surely you can be flexible. Your venue is that old converted barn, right? I'm sure they have other dates available. I felt my face flush with anger and humiliation. But I booked it first. We've already paid vendors, sent announcements. People have made travel arrangements. My father, always the peacekeeper, attempted to mediate. Girls, let's not argue. Can't we work something out? Amber turned to him with glistening eyes. Daddy, we really can't change it. The event coordinator at Lakeside said summer Saturdays book up a year in advance. It's a miracle they had this one date available. I think someone must have canceled. Taylor shifted uncomfortably beside her, but remained silent. I couldn't understand why he wasn't speaking up. This was an obvious conflict anyone could see. The rest of dinner passed in tense conversation about wedding colors and flower arrangements, as if the date conflict had already been resolved in Amber's favor. When Paul and I left, I broke down in tears as soon as we reached the car. I don't understand, I told him. How could she possibly forget our wedding date? And why is everyone acting like I'm being unreasonable? Paul held me close, his voice gentle but firm. Something doesn't add up. No venue charges a non-refundable deposit that quickly. They literally just got engaged. He was right, of course. The next morning, I called Lakeside Manor myself, pretending to inquire about available dates. The friendly coordinator mentioned they had 3 Saturdays open in June, including the 29th, and that they held dates with a refundable deposit for up to 2 weeks before requiring final commitment. When I called my mother to share this information, expecting support for having caught Amber in a lie, she sighed deeply. Geneva, why are you always competing with your sister? If she's set on that date, can't you just change yours? It's not like you've ordered the dress yet. But that wasn't true either. Id found my dress months ago, a vintage-inspired gown that needed significant alterations, which were already in progress. More importantly, why should I change my carefully laid plans because Amber impulsively decided to copy my wedding date? That night, unable to sleep, I scrolled through old photos on my phone, wondering if it'd always be expected to accommodate Amber's whims. In the dim light of our bedroom with Paul sleeping peacefully beside me, I made a private promise to myself. This time would be different. I wouldn't simply surrender what was important to me. I just needed to figure out exactly how to stand my ground. Over the next few weeks, I attempted every reasonable approach to resolve the wedding date conflict. I sent Amber information about other beautiful venues with Saturday openings. I offered to help her navigate vendor contracts if she needed to make changes. I even suggested we could negotiate a discount for both of us by referring each other to our respective vendors. Each overture was met with increasingly hostile responses. My breaking point came during what should have been a simple weekday lunch. I had asked Amber to meet me at a quiet cafe, hoping a public setting might encourage civility. For 20 minutes, I sat alone at a corner table, checking my watch and sending unanswered texts. When Amber finally breezed in, designer sunglasses pushed back on her head, she didn't bother with an apology for her lateness. Sorry, Geneva, I can't stay long. I have an appointment with a florist in 30 minutes. She scanned the menu without making eye contact. Can we make this quick? I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. Look, I know there's tension between us right now, but I really want to understand what's happening. Of all the possible dates, why did you choose my wedding day? Amber lowered her menu slowly, her expression shifting from boredom to something colder. Her perfectly glossed lips curled into a smile that made my stomach clench. Because I knew it would upset you, she said simply. And because I knew I could get away with it. Her honesty stunned me into momentary silence. What? But why would you want to upset me? She stirred her water with the straw, seemingly bored again. Why not? You've always been so perfect, so responsible. Geneva never causes problems. Geneva handles everything herself. She mimicked our mother's voice with surprising accuracy. It gets old, you know. Besides, I deserve a summer wedding, and June is perfect. But I planned mine first, I protested, hearing the childish note in my voice and hating it. First, second, who cares? Amber shrugged. We both know which wedding everyone will actually remember. Mom and Dad are already more excited about mine. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. Your wedding was going to be forgettable anyway. Budget venue, DIY decorations, grocery store cake. I'm doing you a favor, forcing you to reschedule. Maybe you'll save up for something less. Pathetic. The calculated cruelty left me speechless. This wasn't just Amber being thoughtlessly self-centered. This was deliberate sabotage. You know what? I think we're done here. I grabbed my purse, nearly knocking over my untouched water. Amber caught my wrist. Oh, don't be so dramatic. Family comes first, right? She smiled sweetly. That's what you always say. I pulled away and left without another word, hands shaking as I fumbled for my car keys. In the privacy of my car, I finally allowed myself to cry, hot tears of fury and frustration streaking my face. My phone buzzed with a text from Amber. By the way, your caterer Jack says he's available for my date now too. Offered me your exact menu but with upgrades you couldn't afford. Oops. That evening, Paul found me surrounded by wedding planning binders and vendor contracts at our kitchen table. My laptop displayed a spreadsheet of potential new dates and associated costs for changing reservations. What are you doing? He asked gently, setting down his work bag. Trying to figure out if we can afford to change everything, I admitted. Maybe we should just postpone until next year. Paul pulled up a chair beside me, his expression serious. Geneva, stop. Tell me exactly what happened with Amber today. I recounted our conversation, including her admission that she'd deliberately chosen our date and was now contacting our vendors. As I spoke, Paul's expression darkened. That's not just inconsiderate, he said when I finished. That's actively malicious. Why would she go to such lengths to hurt you? I don't know. She said everyone would remember her wedding instead of ours. That ours would be pathetic anyway. Paul ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. And you're considering giving in? After she admitted doing this on purpose? Put like that, it did sound ridiculous. But I wasn't just dealing with Amber. I'm also trying to avoid a total family meltdown. You know how my parents are about her. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. Mom flashed on the screen. I answered on speakerphone, giving Paul a warning glance. Geneva, your sister is very upset. My mother began without preamble. She says you stormed out of lunch and accused her of stealing your wedding ideas. That's not what happened at all. I tried to keep my voice level. She admitted she chose our date on purpose to upset me, and now she's contacting our vendors trying to hire them away. My mother scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. Why would she do that? She's got twice your budget anyway. Her tone shifted to something softer, more manipulative. Honey, I know you're feeling competitive, but this isn't like you. Amber says you've been cold to her ever since she got engaged. Are you perhaps a little jealous that her wedding will be more elaborate than yours? The unfairness of the accusation stung like a physical slap. Mom, I'm not competing with Amber. I'm just trying to have my wedding on the date I've had planned for a year. Well, Amber says you've been spreading rumors in the family that she and Taylor are only getting married to upstage you. That's a terrible thing to say about your sister. I never said that, I protested, catching Paul's eye. He looked as bewildered as I felt. The conversation deteriorated from there, with my mother eventually delivering an ultimatum: either reschedule my wedding or she would not attend. Your sister is very sensitive right now, and I won't have you ruining this special time for her. When I tried to defend myself, she added, I expected better from you, Geneva. Always thought you were the mature one. After hanging up, I turned to Paul in disbelief. Did you hear that? Amber is telling people I'm jealous and spreading rumors. Paul was quiet for a long moment, his expression troubled. We need to talk about something. I got a strange call from my mom yesterday. She asked if we were having financial problems. What? Why would she think that? Apparently, someone told her we were struggling to afford our wedding. That we'd appreciate it if they redirected their contribution toward. He hesitated. Toward Amber and Taylor's ceremony instead. The room seemed to tilt around me. Amber had approached Paul's parents about money. Our wedding plans had always been modest by choice, tailored to what we could manage ourselves with small contributions from both families. The presumption was staggering. The next day, my cousin Jenna called to ask if Amber and I had patched things up. Confused, I asked what she meant. She said you guys had this huge fight because you wanted to change your wedding to a double ceremony with hers, but then got upset when she wouldn't let you use her color scheme or something. The story didn't make sense to me, especially the part about you threatening to wear white to her wedding if she didn't agree. As the days passed, more distorted stories reached me through friends and family. According to Amber, I had copied her wedding vision board, tried to book her dream venue before she could, and was now having a meltdown because she managed to secure the last available date. The narrative she constructed portrayed her as the magnanimous sister dealing with my unstable jealousy. The stress began affecting every aspect of my life. I had trouble concentrating at work, lost my appetite, and started having tension headaches. Paul and I had our first serious argument when he suggested confronting Amber and my parents together, which I resisted, knowing it would only escalate the situation. We need to set boundaries, he insisted. Your family is treating you terribly, and you're just taking it. You don't understand, I told him. This is how it's always been. If I push back, it only gets worse. That's emotional blackmail, Geneva. He ran his hands down his face, clearly frustrated. And you're letting it work. His words stung because they contained truth. I had spent my life accommodating Amber and my parents, believing it was easier than fighting a system designed for me to lose. But now that pattern was threatening to rob me of my wedding day and causing strain in my relationship with Paul. That night, I lay awake long after Paul had fallen asleep, contemplating my options. I could reschedule our wedding, accepting the financial penalties, and disappointing our friends who had already made arrangements. I could continue fighting a losing battle against Amber and my enabling parents. Or I could try something completely different. The idea came to me around 3 a.m, an approach so contrary to my usual conflict-avoidant nature that it felt almost radical. If I couldn't win by opposing Amber directly, perhaps I could win by appearing to give her exactly what she wanted. The thought both terrified and exhilarated me. The next morning, with a strange sense of calm, I called Amber and suggested something unexpected. What if we had a double wedding after all? Amber was silent for so long after my suggestion that I wondered if she'd hung up. Finally, she laughed, a short, incredulous sound. A double wedding? Are you serious? Yes, I replied, keeping my voice light and enthusiastic. Think about it. We could split some of the major costs, coordinate our themes, and the family wouldn't have to choose between events. It could be really special. I braced myself for immediate rejection, but Amber surprised me. Actually, that might work. She sounded thoughtful, calculating. We could do the ceremonies back to back and share the reception. Her quick acceptance should have been my first warning, but I was so relieved by her positive response that I ignored my instincts. We arranged to meet that weekend with our planners to discuss logistics, and I hung up feeling cautiously optimistic. When I told Paul about the conversation, his skepticism was obvious. You really think she's suddenly willing to share the spotlight? He asked. After everything she's done? Maybe she's realizing how difficult it would be for the family to handle 2 weddings the same day, I suggested. Or perhaps the financial benefits appeal to her. Paul didn't look convinced, but he supported my decision to try this approach. I immediately reached out to our venue and vendors to discuss the possibility of accommodating a double ceremony, emphasizing that any changes would need approval from both brides. The weekend meeting started promisingly. Amber brought her wedding planner, Stephanie, an aggressively polished woman with a Bluetooth earpiece who referred to Amber as a premium client. I brought my simple binder of plans and ideas, feeling immediately outclassed but determined to maintain equal footing. We set up at my parents' dining table, spreading out calendars and vendor information. My mother hovered nearby, interjecting with suggestions almost exclusively favorable to Amber's vision. At first, Amber appeared cooperative, nodding along as I outlined how we could coordinate ceremonies to ensure neither bride would see the other before walking down the aisle. So, I was thinking we could use the gardens for my ceremony at 4 o'clock, and you could use the main hall at 5:30, I explained. Then we joined together for the reception at 6:30. Amber exchanged glances with her planner. Actually, I was picturing more of an afternoon garden ceremony for me. Maybe you could do a morning thing in the hall? Her voice lilted upward, making it sound like a question when it was clearly a directive. But the timing would be really strange, I pointed out. People would have to wait around for hours between events. My mother placed a hand on my shoulder, squeezing a bit too firmly. Geneva, be reasonable. The garden is so much prettier for photos. You always said you didn't care much about that sort of thing. What began as a negotiation quickly devolved into a systematic dismantling of my wedding plans. By the end of the 3-hour session, Amber had managed to claim the garden ceremony, the evening reception slot, and the specific band I'd booked months ago. I was left with a morning ceremony in the hall, a strange interim reception with hors d'oeuvres, and the task of finding a new musician. As Amber and her planner gathered their materials, clearly satisfied with the outcome, Stephanie turned to me with a thin smile. We'll need the final catering menu by next week. We're thinking of upgrading to the premium package. You can join that if your budget allows. She emphasized the last word subtly. After they left, I sat alone at the table, staring at my annotated plans now covered in red ink and revision marks. My mother breezed back in, looking pleased. That went well, don't you think? She began tidying up. I'm so glad you're being mature about this. The double wedding was a wonderful idea. She paused, studying my face. You seem upset. What's wrong? Everything we're planning is being changed to fit Amber's vision, I said carefully. I'm losing all the elements that were important to me. She waved dismissively. Details. The important thing is you're getting married. And this way, more attention will be on Amber, which will make the day easier for you. You never did like being the center of attention. This revisionist view of my personality was a familiar tactic. My preferences were always reframed as convenient personality traits rather than legitimate desires. I didn't bother correcting her. Over the next 2 weeks, the true nature of our double wedding arrangement became increasingly clear. Amber scheduled planning meetings without informing me, then presented decisions as finalized. My carefully selected color scheme was deemed too similar to hers, though I'd chosen it first, and I was strongly encouraged to change it. The cake design ID spent months perfecting suddenly had striking similarities to Amber's concept board. The final straw came during what was supposed to be my dress fitting. It invited my mother, my future mother-in-law Linda, and my best friend Caitlin for the appointment. When we arrived at the boutique, I was shocked to find Amber already there, trying on a gown suspiciously similar to the one I'd ordered months earlier. Oh, Geneva! She feigned surprise at seeing me. I was just looking for bridesmaid dresses and couldn't resist trying this on. What do you think? She twirled in a dress that featured the same vintage lace bodice and flowing skirt as mine, though hers was designer while mine was a more affordable replica. My mother cooed appreciatively. It looks absolutely stunning on you, Amber. The saleswoman approached, beaming. Your sister has excellent taste. This designer is exceptional. I can't afford that dress, I stated flatly, recognizing the label. It's 3 times my budget. The saleswoman looked confused. But your sister said you both wanted complementary styles. She showed me your dress, and I suggested this upgraded version. Amber had been to my appointments without me, had seen my dress. The deliberate sabotage was so blatant that even my mother looked momentarily discomfited. I think there's been a misunderstanding. My future mother-in-law intervened smoothly. Geneva already has her dress, We're here for her final fitting before alterations. The appointment proceeded awkwardly, with Amber lingering to offer unsolicited opinions on my dress, which now seemed plain and inadequate compared to hers. When she finally left, I exhaled shakily, fighting tears. "I'm so sorry, Geneva," Caitlin whispered as she helped me out of the gown. "This is beyond ridiculous." Later that evening, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Jake, Amber's ex. We need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow?" I stared at the message in surprise. Jake had dated Amber for nearly 3 years before they broke up 8 months ago. I'd always liked him, though we'd never been close. Curious, and a little wary, I agreed to meet him for coffee the following afternoon. When I arrived at the cafe, Jake was already seated in a corner booth, a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes as if he were expecting paparazzi. He stood when he saw me, his handshake firm but his expression anxious. "Thanks for coming," he said as we sat down. "This is probably weird, but I saw your sister last weekend at a bar. She was pretty drunk, talking loudly about your double wedding." I winced, imagining the scene. "What did she say?" Jake looked uncomfortable. "She was bragging about how Shed managed to take over your wedding. Said something like, 'Now everyone will be there to see my wedding, and poor Geneva will just be the boring opening act.'" He hesitated. "There was more, but I don't want to make you feel worse. Please. I need to know what I'm dealing with." He sighed. "She said she and Taylor got engaged specifically because you were getting married. That she couldn't stand the thought of you having something she didn't. I guess your engagement photos really set her off." The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, yet it did. Taylor had seemed genuinely fond of Amber, if somewhat passive in their relationship. Was he just a prop in her competition with me? The next day, against Paul's advice, I tried calling Taylor directly. To my surprise, he answered on the first ring. "Geneva? Is everything okay?" He sounded concerned. "I hope so," I replied carefully. "I wanted to ask you something about you and Amber. I'm sorry if this is inappropriate, but did you propose because of my wedding?" A long silence followed. Then, "You know what? I'm glad someone finally asked me directly." He lowered his voice. "This whole thing has been insane. We broke up over the summer, right? Then, suddenly in November, after your engagement photos went up, Amber called me crying, saying Shed made a huge mistake and wanted me back. She never mentioned that part to the family," I murmured. "Yeah, well, she was really convincing. Said Shed changed, wanted to commit, the whole thing. Then 2 weeks later, she's showing me ring styles and talking about June weddings. When I suggested waiting a year, she had this complete meltdown. Did she specifically mention my wedding date?" Taylor laughed humorlessly. "Oh yeah, she said it had to be the same day as yours. When I asked why, she said something about finally showing everyone who the better sister is. I thought she was joking at first. The conversation confirmed my growing suspicion. This wasn't just about a wedding date. This was Amber's attempt to definitively establish her superiority by directly competing with and overshadowing me on what should have been my special day. After hanging up with Taylor, I sat in my car, mind racing. This whole situation had spiraled beyond anything I could have anticipated. A childhood of competition had evolved into something truly toxic. And for the first time, I had clear evidence that I wasn't imagining or exaggerating Amber's behavior. I opened my phone gallery and scrolled back to a photo taken at my parents' house last Christmas, before any of this wedding drama began. Amber and I stood side by side in matching sweaters, smiling for the camera. Despite the visual similarity, our paths had diverged so significantly. I had built my life carefully, choosing relationships and goals that fulfilled me rather than impressed others. Amber seemed trapped in an endless cycle of one-upmanship, each achievement hollow because it was measured only against someone else's. In that moment of clarity, something shifted inside me. The hurt and frustration remained, but alongside them grew a quiet, steely determination. I was done playing a game I could never win. It was time to change the rules entirely. That evening, I asked Paul to meet me at our favorite diner, a retro place with vinyl booths and the best milkshakes in town. The familiar setting felt right for the conversation we needed to have. He arrived looking worried, having sensed the seriousness in my voice during our brief phone call. After we ordered, I laid out everything I'd learned from Jake and Taylor, watching Paul's expression shift from concern to outrage. "That's even worse than we thought," he said finally. "She's literally gotten engaged just to compete with you." "Taylor sounds like a victim in this too." I nodded, stirring my milkshake absently. "The thing is, I don't think she even realizes how destructive this is. Not just to me, but to herself. She's planning a marriage based entirely on competing with me. That's not sustainable. So what do you want to do?" Paul's voice was gentle. "We could still change our date, find a different venue. Start fresh. Without all this drama." The old Geneva would have agreed immediately, prioritizing peace over principle. But I wasn't that person anymore. "No," I replied firmly. "I'm done running from conflict and pretending everything is fine, but I'm also not going to win by playing Amber's game. I need to be strategic." For the next 2 hours, Paul and I developed a plan that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Instead of continuing the futile battle over wedding details, I would appear to capitulate entirely. I'd agree to Amber's increasingly unreasonable demands, document everything carefully, and gather irrefutable evidence of her manipulations. Meanwhile, I'd quietly secure our original plans with backup vendors and venues, preparing for the moment when the truth would inevitably come out. "When I don't react the way she expects, she'll escalate," I explained to Paul, "and that's when she'll get sloppy." The first step in our plan was the hardest. I had to convince Amber that I'd surrendered completely. The next day, I called her with forced enthusiasm. "Amber, I've been thinking about the double wedding, and you're right about everything. The garden ceremony will look much better for your photos, and the premium catering package makes more sense. I'm happy to take the morning slot, if it makes your day perfect." Her momentary silence spoke volumes. "Really? You're okay with all that?" "Absolutely," I assured her. "In fact, I'd like you to take the lead on coordinating everything. Your vision for the day is so much clearer than mine." For someone who thrived on conflict and competition, my sudden compliance seemed to confuse her. But she quickly recovered, launching into plans for upgrading the floral arrangements at joint expense, and suggesting I consider a simpler dress to ensure I didn't clash with her more sophisticated choice. Every concession I made emboldened her further. She began scheduling joint appointments with vendors, then texting last-minute changes so I'd arrive to find decisions already made. She insisted on reviewing my vows to ensure they wouldn't overshadow hers. She even suggested I consider fewer bridesmaids so the wedding party would look more proportional with her larger group. I documented everything. Screenshots of text conversations, recordings of phone calls, legal in our state with one-party consent, emails from vendors confirming Amber's unauthorized changes to my arrangements. I created a detailed timeline of events starting from the moment she'd announced her identical wedding date. Meanwhile, I secured a backup plan. I contacted a different venue for the same date, explaining our unusual situation. The manager at Willow Creek Inn was surprisingly understanding, having dealt with family wedding drama before. She agreed to hold the date with a minimal deposit, refundable if we didn't need it. I reached out to my original vendors individually, explaining the situation honestly and asking if they could accommodate either date. Most were sympathetic, especially after experiencing Amber's difficult behavior firsthand. My photographer even confided that Amber had tried to hire him exclusively for her portion of the wedding, offering extra to minimize coverage of my ceremony. The most uncomfortable part of the plan involved telling select family members what was happening. I started with my Aunt Susan, my father's sister, who had always maintained a clear-eyed view of family dynamics. "I'm not surprised," she said after I explained everything. "Your mother's always encouraged this competition between you girls, though she wouldn't admit it." "Why would she do that?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. Aunt Susan sighed deeply. "Your mother has her own issues with sibling rivalry. And, though she never said it outright, I think she resented that you looked so much like your father's college girlfriend." the one he was with before her. This revelation stunned me. I'd never heard about a serious relationship before my parents met. Does Dad know how Mom feels? Men can be oblivious, Susan said kindly. But I think he recognized Amber's manipulation years ago. He just took the path of least resistance. Peace at any price. Speaking with my aunt gave me new perspective on my parents' enabling behavior. But it didn't excuse it. I needed to break this generational pattern of unhealthy competition, not just for my wedding but for any future relationship with my sister. 3 weeks before the wedding, Paul and I decided it was time for the final phase of our plan. We'd accumulated more than enough evidence of Amber's deliberate sabotage, including an accidentally forwarded email where she instructed her planner to ensure her ceremony had all the premium elements, while mine could make do with basics, since it was just the opening act. I scheduled a family dinner at my apartment, ostensibly to finalize wedding details. I invited my parents, Amber and Taylor, and Paul's parents, who were now fully aware of the situation. The evening began pleasantly enough, with Amber holding court about final dress fittings and floral arrangements. My mother hung on her every word while my father nodded politely, occasionally catching my eye with an unreadable expression. After dinner, as we moved to the living room for coffee, I deliberately changed the conversation. Before we discuss more wedding details, I wanted to share something important with everyone. My heart pounded, but my voice remained steady. I've been keeping records of all our wedding planning communications, and I'd like to clear up some misunderstandings. Amber's smile froze. What are you talking about? I connected my laptop to the television, displaying a neatly organized digital timeline. First, I'd like to establish that Paul and I booked our venue and date over a year ago. Here are the contracts with timestamps. I clicked through documentation methodically, showing original agreements followed by Amber's interference. Emails to vendors requesting changes without my knowledge. Text messages where she admitted choosing my date deliberately. The conversation with the bridal salon where Shed presented herself as authorized to view my dress. My mother's face grew increasingly pale. Amber, is this true? Did you really tell them to change Geneva's cake design? Amber shifted strategies with impressive speed. She turned tearful eyes to our parents. I'm just trying to make both weddings beautiful. Geneva agreed to all these changes. Now she's trying to make me look bad because her wedding won't be as nice as mine. I played the recording of our lunch conversation, where Amber explicitly stated Shed chosen my date to upset me, and because she knew she could get away with it. The room fell silent, except for her sharp intake of breath. You recorded me? That's so underhanded. She looked to Taylor for support, but he was staring at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. Next came the most damning evidence. Screenshots of Amber's text conversation with the venue coordinator, attempting to book the entire day exclusively for her ceremony and reception, effectively canceling my portion of the event without my knowledge. My mother put her head in her hands. I don't understand. Why would you do this, Amber? Amber stood abruptly, face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. I'm not sitting here being ambushed. She grabbed her purse, shooting me a venomous look. I thought you were finally learning your place, Geneva. Guess I was wrong. Taylor remained seated as she stormed toward the door. Amber! Where are you going? Home! Are you coming or not? He looked at her, then at the evidence still displayed on the screen, then back at her. No, he said quietly. I don't think I am. The door slammed behind Amber with such force that a framed photo fell from the wall. In the ringing silence, my father cleared his throat. I think, he began slowly, we all owe Geneva an apology. My mother was crying silently, mascara tracking down her cheeks. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't want to know. Taylor stood up, looking dazed. I need some air. To Geneva, he added, I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. After he left, Paul's parents tactfully excused themselves, leaving me alone with my parents. The confrontation I'd both dreaded and needed had finally happened. Now came the hardest part, determining where we went from here. The days following the confrontation Felt like the aftermath of a natural disaster. Everything familiar had been upended, leaving a strange, disorienting quiet in its wake. Amber wasn't speaking to anyone in the family. Shed blocked my number, removed me from social media, and according to friends, was telling anyone who would listen that I'd fabricated evidence to sabotage her wedding. My mother called daily, her voice small and uncertain in a way I had never heard before. These conversations were painful, consisting mostly of her tearful apologies, followed by attempts to justify her previous behavior. "Have you heard from your sister?" Shed asked each time. "I think she just needs time to cool down." My father was more direct in his accountability. He visited me alone at work, suggesting lunch at a nearby park. As we sat on a bench eating sandwiches, he struggled visibly with what he wanted to say. "I've failed you, Geneva," he finally admitted, staring at his untouched food. "I've known for years that something wasn't right in how we treated you girls differently, but it was easier to look the other way." "Why?" I asked, the simple question carrying decades of hurt. He sighed deeply. "Your mother and Amber have always been so volatile. When they were upset, the whole house felt it. You were different. Steadier. It became a pattern we all relied on you being the one who didn't make waves." He looked at me directly, his eyes red-rimmed. "It's not fair that being the reasonable one meant you always had to compromise. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better." His honesty broke something open inside me, grief and relief flooding through simultaneously. We talked for over 2 hours, exploring painful memories but also finding moments of genuine connection. When he hugged me goodbye, promising to help restore the original wedding plans, I felt a cautious hope that our relationship might eventually heal. Taylor reached out next, asking to meet for coffee. He looked exhausted, dark circles prominent under his eyes. "Amber's moved most of her stuff out," he told me without preamble. "We're done." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I hadn't wanted to break up their relationship. "Don't be." He stirred his coffee absently. This confrontation just forced me to face what I already knew. Marrying someone who treats people that way, especially her own sister, it's not the life I want. He hesitated. "She wanted me to back up her story that you doctored those texts and emails. When I refused, she said I was betraying her just like everyone else." "Is she still planning a wedding?" I asked, half dreading the answer. Taylor gave a hollow laugh. "Oh yeah. She's determined to keep the date and venue. Says she'll find someone else to be a groomsman if I won't participate. I think she's still hoping you'll be exposed as the villain here, and everyone will rally around her." His words confirmed what I'd suspected. Amber wasn't going to relinquish control easily. She needed a dramatic narrative in which she was the wronged party, and she would cling to that story despite all evidence to the contrary. Over the next few days, various family members began taking sides. Most, having seen the evidence or heard first-hand accounts from those who were present at the confrontation, supported me. A few, primarily those who'd always been susceptible to Amber's manipulations, remained loyal to her version of events. My cousin Jenna, who'd initially been confused by Amber's contradictory stories, called to offer support. "She's telling people you doctored those messages and recordings," Jenna informed me. "But honestly, nobody who knows you both believes it. Her bridesmaids are starting to drop out too. Megan told me things got really weird at the last fitting, when Amber insisted they all pledge loyalty to her against you." As predicted, without the fuel of my reaction, Amber's behavior became increasingly erratic. She attempted to cancel my original venue booking by impersonating me in an email, but the coordinator, now well aware of the situation, immediately forwarded the message to me. She left rambling voicemails for Paul, alternating between tears and accusations, trying to convince him that I was the manipulative one in our family. Throughout this chaos, I maintained a deliberate distance, focusing instead on reclaiming our original wedding plans. With my parents' support, both emotional and financial, we were able to revert to our original vision. Vendors who had been caught in the middle expressed relief that the situation was resolving, several admitting that working with Amber had been challenging. Exactly 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother appeared at my apartment unannounced, looking pale and determined. Geneva, we need to talk about something important. Her serious tone alarmed me. Has something else happened with Amber? She shook her head, gesturing for me to sit. No, this is about me. About us. She took a deep breath. After everything came out, I started seeing a therapist. I've been trying to understand why I enabled Amber's behavior for so long, why I consistently put her needs above yours. I waited silently, unsure where this was heading. The therapist helped me see something I never wanted to admit. She twisted her wedding ring anxiously. When you were born, you looked so much like Meredith, your father's girlfriend from college. The one before me. It was difficult. Her voice cracked. Every time he looked at you adoringly, some part of me wondered if he was seeing her. The revelation aligned with what Aunt Susan had shared, but hearing it directly from my mother was different. The hurt of knowing Shed allowed that insecurity to color our entire relationship was profound. So, you favored Amber because she didn't remind you of Dad's ex? I tried to keep accusation from my voice, but the injustice of it stung. I didn't do it consciously, she insisted, tears welling. But yes, I think that's where it started. Then it became a pattern. Amber demanded attention, and you seemed so self-sufficient. She looked down at her hands. The therapist says I've been projecting my own sibling issues too. My sister was always my parents' favorite, and instead of breaking that cycle, I recreated it with you girls. We talked for hours, painful truths emerging that had festered unspoken for decades. My mother acknowledged how Shed dismissed my feelings, rewritten my preferences to suit her narrative, and consistently sided with Amber regardless of circumstances. There were moments of defensiveness and backsliding, but overall, it felt like the first honest conversation we'd ever had. When I shared these developments with Paul that evening, he listened with cautious optimism. Do you think things can really change? He asked. Or is this just temporary guilt that will fade once the wedding drama is over? It's a fair question, I admitted. I don't expect lifelong patterns to change overnight, but this feels different. She's never admitted she was wrong before, never mind seeking therapy.
And that's not all, my father continued. This morning, Derek disconnected Ramona's car battery to prevent her from going to this critical doctor's appointment. Also, she would be forced to drive him to a game that, according to Coach Wilson, he wasn't even guaranteed to play in due to his poor attendance at practice.
His concern was valid. Despite the breakthroughs of recent days, I still felt the gravitational pull of established family roles. It would be easy to slip back into being the accommodating daughter who prioritized harmony over authenticity. But the version of me who had documented Amber's manipulations and staged a family intervention was stronger than that. I needed to maintain boundaries while leaving room for relationships to evolve. The week before the wedding brought unexpected calm. Our plans had been restored to their original form. With a few meaningful upgrades my parents insisted on funding. Friends and family confirmed their attendance, many expressing relief that the conflict had been resolved. Even my bridal party, which had weathered the drama with remarkable loyalty, seemed to relax into pre-wedding festivities without the cloud of tension that had hung over everything for months. The only remaining question was Amber. Shed maintained radio silence with me, though I heard Shed been calling our parents regularly, alternating between tearful reconciliation attempts and angry accusations. According to Taylor, who was still dealing with the aftermath of their breakup, Shed been unable to find a replacement partner for the wedding, but was determined to proceed as a solo bride. Part of me felt guilty about her isolation, wondering if I'd pushed too far in my pursuit of justice. But a stronger part recognized that accountability, while painful, was necessary for any possibility of a healthier relationship in the future. I couldn't control how Amber responded to consequences. I could only manage my own behavior with integrity. The night before our rehearsal dinner, I sent Amber one final text. I'm sorry, things escalated this way. Despite everything, you're my sister, and there's a place for you at our wedding if you want it. No response came, but it extended the olive branch. The rest was up to her. As Paul and I finalized seating arrangements that evening, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you think she'll actually show up tomorrow? I considered the complicated tangle of emotions that defined my relationship with Amber, the lifetime of competition and hurt, but also the shared history and occasional moments of genuine connection. I don't know, I answered honestly. But either way, we're getting married on Saturday. And for the first time in months, that simple truth felt like enough. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and perfect, sunlight filtering through the curtains of the hotel suite where I'd spent the night with Caitlin and my other bridesmaids. For a moment upon waking, I simply lay there, absorbing the significance of the day. After months of turmoil, the original date we'd chosen a year ago had finally arrived. My phone buzzed with a text from Paul. "Good morning, almost wife. Can't wait to see you at the altar." The simple message brought tears to my eyes. Despite all the family drama that had consumed our engagement, the core of what mattered remained untouched. Today, I would marry my best friend, the person Wad supported me through the most challenging months of my life. As my bridesmaids stirred, and the room filled with excited chatter, I checked my phone one last time for any message from Amber. Nothing. I set it aside, determined not to let her absence or potential presence dictate my emotions today. The hair and makeup team arrived, transforming the suite into a buzz of activity. My mother appeared mid-morning, carrying a small blue box. "Something borrowed," she said, opening it to reveal a delicate pearl bracelet. It was Grandma's. She wore it at her wedding. "Thank you," I whispered, genuinely touched by the gesture. She helped fasten it around my wrist, her fingers trembling slightly. "Geneva, I need you to know something. I've been so wrong for so long, but am incredibly proud of the woman you've become." She met my eyes in the mirror. Stronger than I ever was. The honesty of the moment caught us both by surprise. I'd spent so many years seeking her approval without really expecting to receive it. Now, on my wedding day, she was offering not just approval, but admiration, acknowledging a strength she'd previously interpreted as stubbornness or difficulty. My father arrived to escort me to the venue, his eyes widening appreciatively at my completed appearance. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Paul's a lucky man." He hesitated, then added, "Your sister called this morning." My heart skipped. What did she say? That she might come to the ceremony, but not to expect her. He looked apologetic. I told her we'd save her a seat, just in case. I nodded, appreciating his handling of the situation. The possibility of Amber's attendance added a layer of uncertainty to the day, but I refused to let it dominate my thoughts. Today was about Paul and me, about the future we were choosing together. The historic venue looked exactly as I'd envisioned when we'd first booked it. The garden ceremony space adorned with wildflowers and soft fabric draping. Inside, the reception hall awaited with tables set according to our original design. Simple elegance rather than the elaborate display Amber had pushed for during our double wedding planning. As guests began to arrive, I watched from an upstairs window, spotting familiar faces from both sides of our families. Paul's relatives mingled easily with mine, unaware of the recent turmoil that had nearly derailed this day. My father knocked gently on the door, signaling it was time. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. I took a deep breath, smoothing the vintage lace of my dress. "Ready." The ceremony proceeded perfectly. Golden afternoon light streaming through the garden trees as I walked toward Paul. His face when he first saw me contained everything I'd ever wanted to see there. Love, admiration, certainty. We exchanged the vows we'd written ourselves, promising partnership through whatever life brought our way. Just as the minister asked if anyone objected to our union, a late guest slipped into the back row. From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of familiar blonde hair. Amber had come after all, alone and dressed simply. Nothing like the elaborate bridal appearance she'd planned for herself. The minister continued without interruption, and minutes later, Paul and I were pronounced husband and wife. During the reception, I lost myself in celebration, dancing with Paul, laughing with friends, accepting congratulations from family members. It wasn't until nearly an hour into the evening that I spotted Amber again, standing alone near the bar, looking uncertain. Taking a deep breath, I excused myself from a conversation and approached her. For a moment, We simply looked at each other, the weight of recent months hanging between us. "Congratulations," she finally said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. "It was a beautiful ceremony." "Thank you for coming," I replied sincerely. "It means a lot." She glanced around at the reception, taking in the details she'd once tried to claim for herself. "I canceled my wedding," she admitted. "Taylor was right, it's not fair to marry someone when you're more focused on competing with your sister than building a life together." The candor of her statement surprised me. "I'm sorry things ended that way." "Are you?" She raised an eyebrow, a flash of the old Amber emerging. "I wouldn't be. Despite everything, you're still my sister. I want you to be happy." I paused, choosing my next words carefully. "Just not at my expense anymore." She nodded slowly, acknowledging the boundary. "I talked to Mom about her therapy and everything." She looked down. "I never realized how messed up things were between us. I've been seeing someone too. A therapist, I mean." The admission must have cost her considerable pride. "Good," I said simply. "I think that will help." An awkward silence fell between us. Too many complicated emotions to navigate in one conversation. Amber finally broke it with a tentative question. "Is it okay if I stay for cake?" I promised not to make a scene. I'd feared many scenarios for this day, but this vulnerable version of my sister hadn't been among them. "Yes, of course," I told her. "We ordered extra, just in case." She gave a small, rueful smile at that. Always prepared. "That's so you." For a brief moment, I glimpsed the possibility of a different kind of relationship between us. One not defined by competition, but by genuine sisterhood. It would take time, boundaries, and consistent effort from both sides. But perhaps it wasn't entirely out of reach. As I rejoined Paul on the dance floor, he pulled me close. "Was that okay?" he whispered, having watched my interaction with Amber. "I think it might be, eventually," I replied, surprising myself with how much I meant it. The remainder of the reception passed in a blur of joy and celebration. Amber kept her word, remaining quietly at a table with cousins, occasionally catching my eye across the room, with an expression I couldn't quite read. She left before the final dances, slipping out with a small wave in my direction. Later that night, as Paul and I prepared to leave for our hotel, my parents embraced us both with genuine warmth. My mother, still emotional from the day, held me a moment longer than usual. "I'm sorry for all the unnecessary drama," she whispered. "But I'm so glad you stood your ground." She released me with visible effort. "You and Paul deserve every happiness." My father simply squeezed my shoulder, his eyes communicating what words couldn't. "Drive safely. Call when you get there." In the car, Paul reached for my hand as we pulled away from the venue. "So, Mrs. Johnson?" he grinned. "Was it everything you hoped for?" I thought about the question, considering the tumultuous journey to this day. Despite the conflict, or perhaps because of it, I'd discovered strengths I hadn't known I possessed. I'd broken lifelong patterns of accommodation and people-pleasing. I'd found my voice and used it to advocate for myself. "Better," I told him truthfully. It was better. 1 year has passed since our wedding day, and so much has changed that sometimes I barely recognize my own life. Paul and I celebrated our first anniversary last weekend with a quiet dinner at home, looking through wedding photos and marveling at how much we've navigated in just 12 months. The immediate aftermath of the wedding brought unexpected developments. My parents continued with therapy, individually and as a couple, working through decades of unhealthy patterns. My father retired from his accounting firm, something he'd been postponing for years out of financial worry. They sold their 2 large suburban house and bought a cozy cottage near the lake, where they seem more relaxed than I've ever seen them. My relationship with my mother has transformed most dramatically. The woman who once dismissed my feelings now calls regularly just to check in, genuinely interested in my life, and careful to respect boundaries. Recently, she admitted that she had always admired my independence, but felt threatened by it, interpreting self-sufficiency as rejection rather than strength. These conversations remain somewhat fragile, shadowed by our history. but each honest exchange builds a more authentic foundation. The most complex evolution has been with Amber. After the wedding, she disappeared for nearly 2 months, temporarily relocating to our aunt's house in Colorado. Upon her return, she seemed subtly different, more subdued, less immediately reactive. She found a new apartment, resumed her marketing job, and began the slow process of rebuilding relationships shed damage during the wedding fiasco. Our reconciliation has progressed in small, careful steps. First, brief text exchanges about neutral topics, then occasional coffee meetings in public places. Eventually, family gatherings where we maintained polite distance, but without the undercurrent of competition that had previously defined our interactions. 3 months ago, during one of our now regular lunch meetings, Amber said something that stunned me. "I don't think I ever really knew you before. I'd been so busy trying to beat you at everything that I never actually saw you as a person." The observation was remarkably insightful for someone who'd spent most of her life viewing me primarily as competition. It opened the door to more authentic conversations about our childhood, our parents' dynamics, and the ways we'd both been shaped by family patterns neither of us had created. We're not best friends, and perhaps we never will be. There's too much history, too many ingrained reactions that still occasionally surface. But we're learning to be sisters in a healthier way, acknowledging our differences without weaponizing them. She still sometimes makes choices I find baffling, and I occasionally frustrate her with what she calls my annoying practicality, but there's a newfound respect underlying our interactions. As for Taylor, he and Amber attempted reconciliation briefly after she returned from Colorado, but ultimately decided their relationship had been too damaged by the wedding drama. He's now dating a veterinarian he met through volunteer work, and seems genuinely happy. Amber has chosen to stay single, focusing instead on personal growth and career advancement. Last month, she was promoted to creative director at her agency, an achievement she celebrated without once comparing it to my own career path. Perhaps the most profound change has been in my relationship with myself. Standing up to Amber, and my parents required accessing parts of me. I'd long suppressed the capacity for confrontation, for setting firm boundaries, for prioritizing my own needs without guilt. Those muscles, once developed, have strengthened other areas of my life. I've become more assertive at work, resulting in a promotion I might previously have hesitated to pursue. I've deepened friendships by expressing my authentic feelings, rather than always accommodating others. I've discovered that conflict, while uncomfortable, isn't necessarily destructive when approached with honesty and respect. Paul likes to tease that he married one woman and ended up with an upgraded version. It's not entirely a joke. I've changed substantially through this experience, but the core of who I am remains the same. I've simply learned to value that core and protect it when necessary. Last week, Amber invited us to dinner at her new apartment, the first time she'd hosted since everything happened. As we sat around her table, joined by my parents and a few close friends, I was struck by how normal it felt. We ate, laughed, told stories that had nothing to do with weddings or competition. When Amber mentioned she was considering dating again, no one questioned her readiness or motivations. When I shared news about a possible job opportunity in another state, no one immediately made it about how my decisions might affect others. After dinner, while helping with dishes, Amber nudged my shoulder gently. "Remember when we were kids, and I would always make you wash while I dried, claiming it was because I was better at making things shiny?" I laughed at the memory. "You were very convincing. I believed you actually had superior drying skills." She handed me a plate, shaking her head ruefully. "I just hated getting my hands wet, always manipulating situations to my advantage." She hesitated. "Do you think we've been like this our whole lives? So caught up in our weird competition that we never really knew each other?" The question held genuine curiosity, without the defensiveness that would have accompanied it a year ago. "Probably," I admitted. "But we're learning now." Later that night, driving home with Paul, I realized something profound. The wedding drama that had felt so devastating had actually been necessary, forcing issues to the surface that had festered beneath smooth appearances for decades. Without that catalyst, my family might have continued indefinitely in our dysfunctional patterns, maintaining superficial harmony while nursing private resentments. Instead, the conflict became a crucible, burning away pretense and creating space for something more authentic to emerge. Not perfect, certainly not without effort, but real in a way our previous relationships had never been. I once believed that keeping the peace was my primary responsibility in the family. Now, I understand that peace without honesty is merely suppression, and relationships built on unspoken truths eventually collapse under their weight. True connection requires the courage to speak difficult truths and the resilience to hear them in return. As Paul and I plan our future together, possibly in a new city with expanded opportunities, I carry this understanding forward. Our marriage won't be defined by avoiding conflict, but by navigating it with mutual respect. Our relationships with family will prioritize authenticity over artificial harmony. And any children we might have will grow up understanding that love doesn't require competition or comparison to be valid. The wedding day that my sister tried to claim ultimately became about much more than a ceremony or reception. It became the line in the sand. The moment I decided my life and choices deserved respect. In standing up for my wedding, I was really standing up for myself, perhaps for the first time. The unexpected gift in Amber's manipulation was the opportunity it created for growth and transformation. Not just for me, but for our entire family system. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come wrapped in the most painful packages, and sometimes the very person who causes your greatest hurt can inadvertently lead you to your greatest strength. Have you ever experienced a moment when standing up for yourself changed not just one situation, but transformed your entire approach to relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support more content like this, and share with anyone who might be navigating family conflicts of their own. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most difficult conversations lead to the most meaningful connections. Until next time, may you find the courage to speak your truth with both clarity and compassion.